I think we can now open the floor for the Q&A, and I think we have one question from one of our audience, Muhammad bin Shams. Thank you, Dr. Ashik, for the interesting talk. Based on your information, what is the current status of ESCO, Super ESCO in Bahrain?
Thank you very much, Mr. Yazan, and for the question from Mr. Mohammed bin Shams. No, last time I worked in Bahrain myself was about 6 years ago with EVA on developing the demand side management program for LED lighting. As of that time, and whatever information I have as of today, I have not heard much about the private ESCO industry or any strategy for developing a super ESCO in Bahrain. I have been going back to the region, as I said, in Saudi Arabia very often. And I am aware of Etihad and others, but not anything in Bahrain so far.
Okay. While we take further questions and answers from our speakers, I'd like to ask the audience if they have questions to please post them on the platform. So very interesting presentations, to be honest, and I had so many questions on my mind. Ibrahim, in the shared savings model, the guaranteed savings model, in the shared savings model, I understood that the investment comes from the customer, right? And in the guaranteed savings model, Innova or similar, ESCO basically provides the original investment. Again, I want to just understand the financing and the viability of presenting an argument related to whether the investor himself, the customer, or the banks to provide the finance for the execution of projects. If you can elaborate a bit on that.
Yeah, I was just to correct the other way around. The guaranteed saving is the customer is the one that that invests, and the shared saving is the ESCO is the one that invests.
Okay.
Or sometimes it's a mixed investment. Sometimes the customer can contribute with a certain payment to boost the like an advance payment of 20% or whatever. So as I said, when we talk about the financing, it's a straightforward approach where you need to make sure that all the investment is recovered from the savings. And when we look at let's say on the shared saving model, the first thing that since the ESCO is the one who is investing, so the main target at the beginning is that he can collect back for the first period of the time. He can collect the investment, so he can take all the payback immediately, and then all the savings can be taken by the client. However, if the client is really interested to start feeling the savings from the beginning, then you can extend the period of the payback by giving a portion of the client. Let's say in some of the contracts we say 80% of the savings at the beginning will come to reimburse the investments of the ESCO, and 20% can go to the client. And after that, if there are additional savings, then this is an incentive for the ESCO to benefit from it. So sometimes we go into in this shared saving model to have, let's say, 70% comes to Innova and 30% to the client. So it depends on the model. So On the guaranteed saving, definitely, it's the customer prefers that he goes and invests immediately, and this is mainly on the government entities where they fund the project from the beginning, and you give them the guarantee as a performance. So, and as I said, usually when we allocate, if it is a shared saving model where we are investing, we try to put some costs related to the financing, but till now in our projects, we have never been financed by any other bank, because sometimes on small projects, we study the feasibility of the project, and Innova can invest by its own, and this is considered as a contract. But sometimes this is for medium-sized project, or let's say low value or low capex projects.
Mr. Yazan, if I may.
So Yazan, you're on mute, I think.
Sorry. Yeah. Yes, please, Ashok, if you have.
No, I think what we heard obviously is absolutely the practitioner right experience. What we have found, and Ibrahim is absolutely right, it also depends on the financial credibility of the ESCO itself. So if the ESCO is small, they are not able to borrow from the bank enough to do many shared savings projects, because unless they are able to recover from the savings, they have to wait for the next borrowing. So what tends to be that ESCOs want to do shared savings, but they don't have the capacity, sometimes the financial credibility, other than big ESCOs like Mr. Ibrahim's ESCO, or the Johnson Controls or the Honeywells. They can do it very well, but not the smaller and medium ESCOs. So that's one thing. Also, sub-consumers like municipalities, if you do a street lighting ESCO project or a water pumping ESCO project, they sometimes are not able to raise money, right? Because municipalities many of them around the world are in the red, already losses, right? So then in that case, a big ESCO can come in and say, I'm going to do a shared savings. You don't have to invest anything. I will take care of everything. So it all depends upon the situation. But my experience is ESCOs prefer to do shared savings because there's a higher margin than guaranteed. Guaranteed savings is more of a consulting service, quite frankly. It's technical guarantee, right? It's not financial service. It's a technical guarantee. And that's my limited experience.
Yeah, sorry. I would add also that we sense a lot in the private sector to go into the shared saving model, because for them, in our perspective, we see that they are going on something that is ambiguous. So they don't know if they feel that there is a big risk that this will not be reserved. Although we are guaranteeing for them that we can provide you a performance bond saying that if we fail, you are protected. But in this way, they prefer that you go, you invest, and we will benefit at the end from the savings. So this is the trend. Usually, that's why we differ between the private and the public sector.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Ashok, I think we just a follow-up on similar kind of, we have a question from Rustam Mamlouk, Mr. Rustam Mamlouk. What are the numbers of critical steps to shift the country towards more efficient consumption of energy? And I'd like to add to that, if you can elaborate a little bit more on the role of the government and the different government authorities like SEA in Bahrain. What is the role to take in terms of really pushing EE technologies and projects?
No, those are good questions, and absolutely happy to answer. So as I was showing in one of the slides, the 5 petals of the flower, the 5 pillars are absolutely important. So you need all of them to make the energy efficiency movement grow at a much higher scale. So you need the right regulations and policies like building performance standards, appliance minimum energy performance standards, energy labeling of appliances. All those regulations and policies are required. You need the right institutions because energy efficiency is a very dispersed action. And it's not the Ministry of Industry's job. It's not the Ministry of Transport's job. It's not the Ministry of Electricity's job. It's an entity's job which can bring together all the ministries together. Because if
Right.
you do housing energy efficiency, you have to deal with the Ministry of Housing. So therefore, SEA, Sustainable Energy Authority, is very well placed actually to push this as an institution. Most countries where you see success in energy efficiency have a centralized institution like SEA. You go to Saudi Energy Efficiency Center, India, Bureau of Energy Efficiency, Thailand, DEDP. You go to US Federal Energy Management Program. So every country which has shown success in energy efficiency has always had an institution like SEA. So I would say those two are main things. Then you need technical capacity and awareness. Those are the pillars. Along with financing, the 5 pillars makes the energy efficiency work. Now, I believe like SEA can also even become a super ESCO by themselves, because it doesn't mean that a government entity only does policy formulation and implementation. They can become the super ESCO, like as you see, Tarsheed in Saudi Arabia is a government entity which is acting as a super ESCO. So it all depends on the functions of an organization, how you set it up. But final point is, at the end of the day, you have to leverage private sector. This
Right.
is not the government's job. The work and the action has to happen through private sector manufacturers, private sector service providers, private sector measurement and verification agencies, private sector financiers. And how do you unlock that private sector participation by doing the right thing is the role of the government. So they put the right policies, right enabling environment, right standards, right benchmarks, and as I said, in some cases, act as a super ESCO where they can provide the initial support to the private ESCOs if they're struggling. And then you leave it for the private sector to take care of it. So I would say SEA can really play a fantastic role. And when I was there in Bahrain 6 years ago, SEA did not exist. I'm so happy to see this organization come up, because it's an absolutely essential critical step for energy efficiency movement in any country.
Thank you, Ashok. I think a lot of food for thinking for our colleagues at the SEA. Maybe they, in a short period of time, they will take further initiatives other than the initiatives that they already have. And I know they have their plate full. Luke, can you? I mean, we have a question about. The value of blockchain certificates, the renewable energy certificates, does it have a monetary value? How does that relate to financing of projects, whether EE or even, whether it's an RE or EE, if that is also something that relates to the energy efficiency? I'm not sure, but at least in renewable energy and renewable energy certificates, how do you monetize the value of those certificates? And again, how does it help in financing of projects in the RE spectrum?
Yeah, this is a really great question, and it really ties up basically the summary of my presentation, to focus on this financial aspect of the externalities that are captured by the renewable energy certificate. Because when we started this process, we were working with a number of people, and basically we realized that this is one of the main focuses, that Bahrain has a very good test bed for this capturing the extra monetary value that can be created by these RECs, because there are carbon markets all around the world, and I won't go into that here. That's quite a big story there. But in Bahrain's case, the RECs are actually produced, minted, or retired by the SEA only for Bahrain. So it's just within a sandbox environment for that country. So the carbon markets around the world, they will somewhat be an interaction, or they might not be. So that's something that's really critical for this test bed. And so there is many externalities that are created by solar energy implementation. That's you can calculate by the lower LCOE, lower levelized cost of electricity, all of the carbon capture, not carbon capture, carbon saving by installing solar panels and solar power plants. So these externalities can be inherently provided by the RSE that can be captured inside the whole program. So in this program, the actual NFTs, when they're traded inside the environment of Bahrain, the price will be set at initial price, and then it will go through its own process of discovery in that program. So that's something that we've done quite a bit of research into, and we've actually leaned on some of the leading researchers in the SolarCoin Foundation as well, which were started off researching in, and there's a number of good literature there about the nature of value itself. What is value? Is value part of a network externality? So a lot of these aspects are included in the base research for this energy certificate, renewable energy certificate value. If you go to the wider aspect outside, just on the pure open markets of open decentralized blockchains, they have their own discovery process of value according to the network sizes. So there's even equations to calculate that. But in the case for this, for Bahrain, within this sandbox environment, it will go through its own process. And it's really important that the market itself basically doesn't get flooded by an external market, which is, for example, they can produce RECs in other parts of the world at a very low price or very low cost, and then flood a small market like Bahrain. So it's very important that in this test case, it just goes on this process, and then it finds its footing, and then it scales up very carefully and accordingly. So there's definite benefits to this process. And one of the really critical points of the whole project is concentrating on the traceability and the provenance of the data itself, to the point where it would create like a huge computer attack on the whole network to be able to break those cryptographic provenance keys, which is near next to impossible, but you wouldn't say it's totally impossible.
Thank you.
So hopefully that expands it.
It does. Thanks a lot. Another question from one of the audience. What is the range of payback periods for energy efficiency projects and renewable energy projects? Let's start with Khalid. If you can tell us more about the payback periods of renewable energy projects. And in addition to that, we have seen like LCOE's numbers that really varies a lot between one country and one region and the other. If you can give us like an insight, why do we see such a big variation sometimes in the LCOEs of at least utility scale projects?
Sure. So for the payback period, as you rightly mentioned, it will depend on for both payback period and LCE. It will depend on each country, depending on how much the cost of the energy itself, depending on the cost of the installation, depending on how much you can get the panels, the equipment. So to answer the question, for example, for Bahrain, it also depends on the type of solar installation, whether it's rooftop, whether it's ground mount, whether it's car parking. I would give a range here. I mean, it's usually between, let's say, 7 to 9 years, depending on the type of installation, depending on also the yield, because it might be, for example, the panels you might be facing south, it might be tilted with an angle which produces more energy. So it depends on multiple factors, which is the price, the yield you can get on the system, which is the kilowatt hour per kilowatt peak, and obviously the cost of the tariff. Other countries, definitely the payback period will be, for example, in Dubai would be less, in Jordan would be even less, as Jordan has the highest tariff, I would say, in the region. Dubai probably second. And in terms of levelized cost of energy, as I said, it will all depend on the specifics of the project in terms of procurement and the type of installation. Yeah.
Right. Just a comparison between the payback periods of RE projects and EE projects. Maybe Ibrahim would, and Khalid, of course, if you'd like to give us a little bit of insight into that.
For the EPC contracts where we are not using the solar as a booster, as I recall in my presentation, the client sometimes defines the payback that he wants. And in principle, if we look at a healthy project, a payback more than 4 or 5 years does not look really interesting for clients. So a period of 4 to 5 years payback in EPC contracts is something that can fly. Now, when we do the audit and when we propose the ECMs, we might find a lot of energy conservation measures that we can propose. Some of them can give you, let's say, high payback, saying that some of them can give you less than 1 year, and some of them can give you 4 or 5 years or 6 years even. So globally, when we combine all these ECMs, we will try to find a way where we can respond to the client requirement and be within this payback. So usually a very attractive proposal is for 2 to 3 years payback, with the maximized saving to be provided. But if the client is willing really to invest more, then the payback can increase. But usually the contracts, we have never signed a payback more than 6 years contract. 4 to 5, that is an average. And this is usually set by the clients, and not necessarily that you sign a contract with a guaranteed saving over the payback only. You sign it for 10 years, for example. So you continue beyond the payback to guarantee to the client over 10 years this saving, this guarantee on the savings.
Khalid, do you have further?
Yeah. Totally agree with Ibrahim. I mean, from ECMs like lighting, for example, definitely the payback period is much less than it's solar, than for solar, for renewable energy. Solar usually tend to have a higher payback period than let's say not all ECMs, but I would say like lighting, for example, like I don't know, VFD drives, depending on the ECM. Some ECMs have similar, but most of the ECMs will have lower payback period than solar.
Thank you. Dr. Ashok, you might have something to add here.
No, I think I agree with Ibrahim and Khalid that we use a benchmark of 3 to 4 years as a reasonable number. But you're right that lighting, especially LED lighting, pays back in 3-4 months, quite frankly. It's so attractive. Whereas if you go to street lighting, it's not so quick. It takes sometimes 4 or 5 years. Similarly, motors, efficient motors in industries, it takes a long payback. Whereas other actions. So what we have also found is that a super ESCO is able to take a longer term payback because they are a government public body, whereas private ESCOs want recovery quickly. It all comes to shared savings, so therefore quicker payback is easier. So I think it all depends on which sector you're working on, and even if it is longer payback, like Tarshid is doing in Saudi Arabia, or EESL, Energy Efficiency Services Limited, is doing in India, they do these 7-year, 6-year payback period street lighting projects on LEDs, because those don't pay back before 6-7 years, and it's fine. They can take that financial risk, being a super ESCO, being a public super ESCO, but it may not be that relevant sometimes for smaller ESCOs who want a quicker. I would say 3 to 4 years is probably the benchmark in energy efficiency.
I would, if you allow me to add one more point, please. Also, we need on top of the payback also is related to the condition of the building. Because sometimes if you enter a building where, let's say it's a 30 years old building where they have chillers that are not at all efficient, then even with the high capex, with like changing the chillers and installing them, it might give you a very, very effective payback of a short period of time, because already your consumption is very high and you can interrelate this together.
Yes. Yeah. Clear.
If I may
thank you.
just say one more thing.
Please. Yeah, sure.
Sorry. One more thing to add. In terms of solar, I mean, usually the performance warranty is 25 years. This system, the lifetime is long. Compared, for example, to chiller or maybe other equipment that would have a lower lifetime. That's why when you structure a PPA for 20 years, it's long, but this is the performance warranty is 25 years anyways from the panel manufacturer. And compared to other equipment, that's why it's, when we structure PPAs at 15, 20 years, it makes sense. It makes sense to go with a long-term contract. That's
fine. Just one question that always, like, I've been kind of facing this question with general beneficiaries of EE and RE projects. Is there a sequence that you feel is more appropriate for an industry, for example, to look at energy efficiency programs first and then consider an RE project, or should they go in parallel, or how would you foresee that, Brahim and Khalid and maybe
Yes.
Dr. Asher?
I mentioned in the presentation that we consider the renewable energy as a booster. Why we consider it as a booster is because let's start first with the things that are tangible quickly, and this relates to the payback also, and things that can evolve from zero capex, where you don't need even to invest, going more on an investment with so many options to do with the lower payback, and then you go for the solar. So for us, we see it that proceed with the start with zero capex, start with small investments, and then you go. That's why we consider the solar as a booster, unless it is a target that you need just to do a solar because a client requirement, and sometimes we receive that and we use it as a long term. Then this will go independently and implement a solar project for this savings.
Thank you, Brahim. I think we're running out of time, but I'd like to hear from Khalid relative to this point, and then we can conclude.
What I would say is that it all depends on the energy consumption of the customer. The energy consumption is really high, and if you do the energy efficiency and you do the solar, and still it's you cannot cover the entire load in terms of solar, for example, then might as well to do both. But then if, for example, the consumption is limited in a way, then energy efficiency to start with would be great to know exactly the consumption after the energy efficiency, what has reached, and then solar, you can size the plant according to the consumption, so that we don't generate energy that is more than is needed. Although there's net metering, but still you have to size the solar plant appropriately. So this is my
All right, I think our time is up. Getting some warnings from from the SEA that time is running. I'd like to extend my gratitude to our panel members for this informative session, and I extend my appreciation to the esteemed audience, wishing everybody to stay safe and healthy, and I hope that you can probably communicate through the platform with the distinguished speakers. I'm pretty sure they will answer further questions if needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Our appreciation goes out to the moderator and speakers for the in-depth discussions and for outlining a range of financial options available for the successful implementation of renewable energy and energy efficiency projects. We will now have a short break. Here's your golden opportunity to visit the virtual exhibition and to tap into the power of networking with other delegates at the event. Please join the auditorium at 3:05 p.m. Bahrain time.